Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here. It's good to see a full turnout, so no apologies.
Yes, Councillor, Borough Councillor.
Johnny Shilton.
Has sent his apologies. He has another meeting tonight.
Okay, in good time, would you normally expect him at every meeting?
He can. If he can. The trouble is, it always clashes with the overview and scrutiny, which is what he's on. So he can't make it every time, but he does if he can. If there's something specific on the agenda, because I invited me to an agenda, so that's what's happening.
Item 2, declaration of any interest. I don't think there's any declarations, so that's fine. Item 2.1, item 2.2, nothing there for Yvonne. Item 2.3, I'd like to remind you all that this meeting is being recorded for publication. Nobody present, no members of the public present, so we'll press on with the minutes, or the agenda as it stands. First, item 3, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on 14th of May. We've all had a copy of those.
Yes.
Were there any adjustments made at all to anything that was sent round? Or?
No.
Yes. Those that you'd spotted, the numbering wasn't correct, but I have corrected it. The last one that you probably had, the number doesn't follow on.
Gosh, that's a good spot.
But I have corrected it on the ones you're going to sign, and also if we could amend the previous meetings minutes when we amended, we put in not.
Yes, we did.
But it was correct, the original was correct. I should have had more faith in what I'd written in the first place. I just automatically thought I was
I shall withdraw my mea culpa for not having spotted
Yes,
it,
it
because I
wasn't
thought
a
it was
mistake.
right in the first place.
Yeah, no, the officer thought that it might actually be possible to resurface that part of the driveway.
Okay.
So we need to cross that out.
Cross that out initially.
Yes, please.
Sorry, I'm just looking for the minutes. What date did they send out? Did you send them out? Can you remember the minutes? Right.
When I sent the agenda out, which would have been last Thursday.
Same, they came together.
Yeah, it's on the same email.
So now
Okay, so now we're going to sign. If everybody's happy with the minutes of the last meeting, I shall now sign those.
Yes. That one.
Mm-hmm.
And then under here, because I'm just sign. And date. 11th. 6th.
Thanks. Matters arising. Item A, an update on the Swan. Some of you may already know the situation, which it's under considerable threat of closure. I did go in at the weekend, attempt to see Kevin, who was not present, but I spoke to Georgia, and she confirmed that a Chinese gentleman, an Elvis impersonator, has been interested, has declared an interest in buying the pub, and appears to be continuing that interest. They are slightly sceptical about. He's in his mid-70s. His wife, apparently, when they came down last week, started cross-questioning Georgia about how to run a bar. So Kevin and Georgia are slightly dubious about the ability of that couple actually to make a go of it. But from our perspective, I think if they were prepared to buy it, we would be prepared to let Elvis impersonator have a good run, and perhaps with a good Chinese cuisine, it could become a destination pub, distinctive from the others around here. So at the moment, there's a possibility of that. I'll keep in touch with them and keep reporting on any changes in that scenario. Item B, the Sports Club lease update. 3 of us at least were there at the Sports Club meeting. Paul, you were quite vocal there. Would you like to update the committee on?
Not again.
Great feeling of deja vu here. The short version. They haven't managed to agree amongst themselves what to do in terms of moving the signing of the lease forward. The chair, Paul Hutchinson, has decided basically he's had enough and is standing down. I believe since then, from then to now, they were supposed to have a meeting of the committee, so if anyone knows who's now the chair,
Didn't happen.
the meeting didn't happen.
It didn't on the appointed day. As far as we could tell on Friday, it wasn't very clear. There was no. The word was that it didn't appear to have happened.
Right. The concern is that they are less aware of they're unincorporated as a charity, which basically means the trustees carry all the liability themselves personally. From previous experience, I advised them this was not a very good idea, and they should seek to become a CIO, which is a charitable incorporated organisation, and that comment was backed up by Jeremy, who's got some knowledge and experience of that. They didn't seem to fully grasp that, and I did talk subsequently to Adrian and Mervyn about it in the sports club afterwards. They seem to think it's going to take ages and ages and ages. It doesn't necessarily. There's charity commissions say it can be done between 4 and 6 weeks. 4 and 6 weeks. I'm a little sceptical of that, but it's not much longer. What was useful is that the committee members seemed to think that they couldn't change anything and become incorporated because John Mallet wouldn't agree to it. But Willie Everett was there, who's John Mallet's agent, and he didn't see it was a problem. And that the constitution of the actual organisation is less important than the content of the lease, which seeks to preserve the principles of that which was signed donkeys years ago. Time is running out, and I learned subsequently, I'm not sure to mention the meeting, that John Mallett's heir was Hugo. Hugo went through a divorce, so it was protected, then he remarried, and now he's going through another divorce. And the concern is that once John, bless him, has maybe passed on, and maybe his heirs have changed because that's passed on as well, the fundamental principle that I think in the past we're interested in is protecting the asset for the benefit of the whole village. We're a bit stuck. I think we've done almost what we can do in that the three of us were there giving our thoughts. I think it's remarkable, given that people are actually on the committee, that they haven't managed to get their act together and sort it out. I did raise at the meeting online a week ago, whether we said exactly this in the past or not, Jeremy, is in my view neither here nor there, but the fact is, do we as a parish council think we should do something, take some sort of initiative, or do we just let the whole thing slide? And they were talking about maybe getting kicking down the can down the road and getting extension for 6 months or what have you. In my view, that wouldn't be an answer. They seem to be worried that they're going to incur high legal costs if they want to change their incorporation. But on the other hand, it was agreed that it wouldn't be that high if they got a lawyer to help them. And in fact, they could raise the money if probably cost 50 pence a head per person in the village to do it. It's just this sort of treacle-like mentality, which I think is just, I find it difficult to understand. And the question I think for us is, what do we do as guardians of the village? Where does our responsibility lie? And so I'm not saying we are responsible for it. Do we do nothing? Do we try and chivvy them along? But we haven't managed to successfully do that over the last, pre-COVID basically. Or do we consider at least approaching John Mallet and putting forward an alternative, which is that he actually leases the sports ground to the parish council, and they then sublet it in line with his wishes to everybody in the village, but through an organisation called Wittersham Sports Club. I'll stop there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very concise summing up. Sadly, there's a clash of personalities involved in this committee that I'm sure you all know about. Yeah. And the presence of one or two people is restricting the opportunity for others to join up who might well be able to take the thing forward sensibly. I happen to know that Willie Everett has been summoned to see Miriam, which is quite a good thing in many ways. I believe he circulated some minutes of his own of the sports club meeting, and some offence was taken, as it probably was bound to be. Anyway, as it happened, I had supper with Willie last week. We're friendly as a couple with them, and he explained to me that this meeting was on, and he said he would, I think it's next Wednesday or Friday, he would fill me in on the results of it. I'm very much with Paul. The default situation here should be, if it's appropriate and permitted under our regulations for the parish council, to take on the lease should there be no other solution, although we've got plenty on our plate, so we don't particularly need it. But I imagine all over the country there are parish councils who hold leases for village sports grounds, so I can't see that there should be any fundamental objection. And I think, we won't just let this item fester every month on our agenda without demanding some sort of conclusion, and if necessary, taking the kind of drastic action that Paul has suggested. As I say, most of you will know the personalities involved.
I don't actually know who's on the sports club committee, and even if you said the names, I probably don't know the personalities involved. But if, as you say, there's a divide and there's not going to be a way forward, therefore, with them, regardless, then obviously we do need to look at something alternative.
An interesting point was raised by Jill Toogood, who said, why aren't they applying for grants? And there are a considerable number of grants, right, for rural communities or for sporting communities, cricket clubs or NatWest, but the problem is that when you've got less than 3 or sometimes 2 years to run, you don't stand a chance of getting a grant. And they are in purdah almost in that respect. Miriam's answer was interesting, or comment was that, yes, we could get £100,000 from the Football Association, which caused a few of my eyebrows of her fellow committee members to raise. She also made a comment about, I think she said that she could foot the bill for the lawyers. So it's a really quite strange situation, but right at the heart of it is this sort of internecine warfare of the football club versus the rest.
Good evening.
I think that Paul has explained quite a lot of what was going on. I think that the committee is in fact moving in the right direction. I thought that Miriam seemed to be more constructive than in previous meetings, and I think she is also beginning to wonder about risks and liabilities. I agree with you that we want a solution somehow, and if the better solutions are not available, then we have to look at worse ones. I do, however, suggest that whereas the parish council agreed about 10 years ago that we would stand as the legatee of the legatee of the freehold, were John Mallet to decide to leave it to us, it would still have been leased, of course, to the sports club. And it would have resulted in us holding the ring between the warring parties, because that's what's always been a problem to John, that he's had them at him from both sides. We would, however, still have been dependent on the sports club, and hopefully, of course, a lease renewal coming up next year. We now know that the lease renewal is coming. Were we in some way to become involved in it as a plan C or D, then it would be a load on us, and more specifically a load on either Yvonne or someone else that we brought in, or of course a councillor who was delegated to deal with it. And that would still be depending on the sports club to do the sport. What we would not want to be doing was getting ourselves involved at the muddy end of it. We would be either the landlord or an an intermediary leaseholder. What we wouldn't want to be doing is pretending that we were the sports club. Now, there are others who do it, and one that's pretty close, unless it was changed design, where Mary Philo has to deal with it. And many years ago, she told me it was quite a load. And that's not necessarily, I mean, they may have the same sort of problems as us, but they won't be the same problems as us. So I think that I'm not in any way saying that we want to shrink back from finding a solution if it's the only one available, but I'm not keen on us running away with the idea that it's in any way a preferable solution to several others that ought to be first in the list, because we might rue the day, and I think Yvonne would rue the day.
I think it would be very disappointing if we were sitting around this table in a month's time without being able to provide something positive in the way of progress. If you're interested, we're on item 3B, the sports club lease renewal. So, and we're now moving on to 3C, the S106 update, and Yvonne has... Sorry,
just going back on this, we haven't come to a conclusion, we're
still monitoring. We're still monitoring. We're not going to let it fester. We're monitoring, and
do we have any concept of the content of the meeting proposed between Miriam and Willie?
No, I think it's just that he made a record of his view of the sports club meeting.
So she's going to admonish him, basically.
I think that's probably it.
Yes, well, that's nothing new, is it? And I mean, there's been admonishments going on for such a long time. Anybody who puts their head above the parapet does get admonished in one way or another, and that's a problem.
But he doesn't have to accept the admonishment. He's quite in a very strong position to say, I will write my note, and what you think of it is for you, not for me.
I think it's just going to work as to get them talking to each other. I mean, I think...
And is there any merit in you going to see Miriam yourself?
Well, that's on my agenda as well, subject to what Willie tells me. I mean, we just need to try and channel that great brain and ability into positive activity on behalf of the village, rather than just being a bit of grit in the wheel at every opportunity. It seems such a waste of
if we look at it optimistically, it's not beyond the realms, and I know we have low expectations, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility that what Miriam actually wants to do with Willie is to explore potential ways forward.
Could be.
And she is very smart in terms of understanding how to do things, and she does read papers. She may very well, for argument's sake, by now have read up on CIO in great detail.
Surely.
The challenge they've got is that they don't have a chair, although they might have resolved that. And I think it might be useful if anyone is speaking to a member of the committee, as we think there is in the next week or a couple of weeks. We might come across one of the individuals, I'm thinking maybe of Mervyn, for example, who's pretty close to it, just to say, look, have they made any progress, not on this, but as a committee, as a sports club committee? I don't know.
I mean, if Paul has resigned, who is the sort of current,
exactly?
Who is the current linchpin to be talked to?
The idea was they were going to have a meeting to resolve that, but they can't even get a treasurer or a secretary.
So who is the linchpin?
We don't know.
So is there anybody to negotiate with there at all?
Yeah.
Does it exist?
Well, that's why I think an informal approach, at least to see if any progress has been made on that. I mean, the if nothing is signed legally on March is it 31st or the 1st?
No, the middle.
The middle of March. They need to vacate, but they can take all the buildings with them.
Okay,
that's the condition of it. But that would be, in my view, a disastrous outcome for the village. I think that I agree with John. We need to resolve that at the next meeting. If nothing's happened and there's no progress, and they're still effectively at loggerheads, I would suggest at the next meeting we need to make a decision as to whether we take some form of leadership position on it or not.
Do we have a meeting in August?
I don't know if there's a
July.
Not in August.
July.
So- July, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Items.
Members of the sports club committee, if you know it. You don't
No,
know.
I have no idea.
Okay.
Can I just say I'm sorry I was late,
Sure.
so I've missed the public session, but I've got a couple of things to say. Could I say them at the end of the meeting,
We
please?
can adjourn the meeting.
Can we adjourn
Yes.
and let him say it now?
Yes.
Because you don't want him to hang around for the rest of the hour.
Okay, well, I'll be as quick as I can. Anything relating to sports field, could an issue be made of the parking there, because there can be up to 10 cars parked on the road there. It's a big problem for the residents opposite, not us, but I've been told that one resident actually put little notices all the way along the fence saying no parking. And they were very small, they took no notice of it anyway. So I would have thought that provision for more parking within the sports field ought to be a major concern. The other thing was, on my way down tonight, a couple of young lads on their bikes, one must have been 16, 17 years old, standing right up, high on the bike, and going along like this, along Poplar Road. Bonkers.
Never a bus when you want one.
Pardon?
Never a bus when you want one.
No.
Actually, there was one at 10 to 7. There's a 312 going back from Rye.
No, there is an element in the village we know who, not just that kind of thing, but go well beyond that in various ways, and obviously if one gets the opportunity to discourage them, and of course can be quite dangerous to approach these kids, but thank you for coming. Could you give us your name and where you live?
Phil Wilcox.
Phil
Wilcox.
Wilcox. Yeah.
Fortunate speaking. On the road.
Unfortunate.
May I just ask a quick question? We've heard nothing about our police representative.
Well, I've been seen.
Did he say he wasn't coming, or did we just not hear, or...?
Well, it doesn't come very often.
Right. We seem to be in a bit of a sort of wasteland at the moment with the police, and I think if there was a representative here, they could have heard Phil's comment.
Trouble is, if you remember when he covers all
I know.
these X number of villages, and
Yeah.
if he's here, he's not out watching these kids on their bikes.
Is there a way we can report to Central Command or something like that? I just feel that we're missing out.
I mean, I'm quite happy to report what Phil said in the hope that he will come round,
Yeah.
which is what we happened before when we had the catapult problem.
Yes.
He came out.
Well, I think we've still got a catapult problem.
Yes.
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 There is an email, and I'll have to go back in my book and see if I can find it if you chase me out of this meeting. It's something like CSU at, or CSU Ashford at, and then the rest of the police. And it's an email that does go to the people who are in the office of the CSU, which is what we're concerned with. Our police constable comes under the CSU and with a sergeant and an inspector.
It's
Yeah,
probably on
we
their
need to
newsletter,
know.
isn't it?
Could be that, yes, possible.
So, goes on.
And you are encouraged to use that as a communication medium if you want to.
I hope to go straight to him.
Yeah. Okay.
He comes back to.
So there are two items here. One is the parking on Sportsfield, and perhaps a note should go to who? To the sports club in some form. Perhaps Mervyn, because
They are aware of that and they have put notices up themselves saying please park at the village hall, but that doesn't mean that anyone does.
No, it doesn't.
The incidents always happen when there's a football festival. I'm not tarring them all with the same brush. But you don't get that level of turnout, sadly, for the cricket fixtures. So it's the big football festivals. We have tried to do that in the past. And if you want somebody to send an email to, then I can suggest someone on the football committee, the chair. Miriam, as I understand.
Secretary. She's secretary.
Oh, secretary. Right.
Secretary of the football club.
She's an elected official, representative on the main committee
Oh yeah.
of the football club and the football club. Problem? So you've got a name.
It did cause some problems this last Saturday. The number of cars, the car park was full.
What was happening last Saturday?
Football.
It'd be football.
And it was-
It's most Saturdays.
It was going right up to the junction of the street, and until following that there was a lot of blockages.
Right, I'll email Miriam and ask her if she can arrange something in the future.
But there was no signs up to say like, extra car parking at the village hall.
They wouldn't be beyond their wit, surely, to purchase half a dozen no parking cones and put them out half an hour before the tournament starts and take them in at the end of the tournament. I mean, it happens in other villages. Just a suggestion.
Anyway, just as long as this gentleman can see that we're working on, and the mention of the antisocial behaviour, which
I can pass that on.
is an ongoing issue.
I was going to raise catapults at the council meeting a fortnight ago, but the police didn't come to that. They usually do, but they weren't there.
Okay, well, thank you. Anything else you'd like to say while we're temporarily adjourned?
No.
Okay, so we'll carry on with our agenda. We're now 4C, the S106 update, and there is some news on this.
Well, only that we're trying to arrange a site meeting with Annie Brown, possibly this week. And I've asked Chairman and Jeremy if they'd like to attend as well. And get something together. I'm waiting to hear back from her.
And this relates, does it to the possible development?
Stocks Road.
Stocks Road.
Well,
Yeah.
Because that's big enough to bring money, potentially, if we happen to tick boxes. But there has been concern in the past that their system in Ashford, and they did have an ONS inquiry into it a year or two ago, has never been particularly, let's say, user-friendly. I think some of the parishes where development is endemic are kind of in the groove and they know how to do it, and they get a lot of opportunities. And it's been said in the past, you know, where you have a whole range of projects ready to go and you just wait for the opportunity to put them in. If you're getting, you know, 100 houses here and 50 houses there, you can do it. Well, when was our last project? 20 years ago? No, it's not the same. But we don't want to miss the opportunity if it does come along. It's worth some tens of thousands of pounds potentially.
And I think once we meet her, and we can find out more from her side as to what is actually going on with this procedure now.
Exactly.
And it's normal for that element to be thrashed out before the actual planning consent comes
It
through.
has to be signed up as a deed by the time it's consented, as I understand it. Now, exactly where the consent falls, whether it's when they agree or whether they agree because there's reserved matters or whatever, I don't know. So at some point, it has to be legally done and signed as a deed by that point. And Ashford has had disasters in the past, such as the duelling of the A28 in Ashford.
yes, correct.
It all went pear-shaped, so it's a mess. But it's all under a legislative framework, which makes it difficult for everybody.
Somebody said to me today that there was a new application in along with the bedrooms, is that right?
Didn't know.
Nothing's come to me yet.
You mean the one next
I
door?
was told earlier on today that there is a new application in.
They may be misunderstanding. It was put in as a site submission.
Yeah.
Now, it was a site submission last time and it got rejected. In other words, it didn't go into the Ashford plan. But they have put it in again now. And it's not for the 7 houses that got rejected by all and sundry from us to the inspector. This is now for 40 houses or some such.
That's what I heard.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a site submission.
Bigger number than that,
Yes,
actually.
okay. It's a site submission, meaning that they are hoping that Ashford will put it in as an allocated site. If they did put it in as an allocated site, they're then on the fast track to getting approval. And that's done not as an application, but as a planning process by the planners when they write the plan. So the only allocated site we've had, well, we haven't had an allocated site. Well, we did in a way. The 4 they went ahead with before that as well. We haven't had an allocated site in Wittersham in my time.
So it was I was told quite clearly it was a new application, but that's not definitely not the case.
It's not. They're using the wrong words. It's a site submission. Oh, by the way, while we're on this subject, if you're all right with this, there was some discussion at Calc. We were told before by the head of planning, Simon Cole, who many of you know, before Christmas, when he came to see us in about October or something, that they would be coming round once they'd got the site submissions listed and they knew what they all were. They would be coming to parishes. They needed to know where they could come to, and they were kind of quite willing to do a road show all around the place. They've now pulled back from that. They're only going to do a small number. As far as we're concerned, there will be one in Tenterden, and it will be for people to go to that, and it will cover Tenterden and all the villages. But then again, we were told, oh, they're always willing to come and talk to the parish council. So that the other thing is for the public, by the way. So, you know, I would, they may be willing to come to the parish council, but getting them here is another matter. They've got 40 odd.
Yes, because last time we had a big meeting
Oh,
and
yeah.
we had forms
Yeah,
that
yeah.
people filled in as to what they
Yeah.
thought about all the different
That's right.
signs.
There were 3 of them, and people could say
Yeah.
you know, what they thought.
Yes,
They're not going to do it this time.
because I did have all those when I was sorting through.
I suspect they've got less staff. Planners are very hard to get now, and they're just withdrawing a bit.
Okay, item D, update on the possible transfer of the Ashford land. Jeremy, I think you're giving consideration to who we might approach on that.
Well, Councillor Chilton was asked by me a while ago to put out feelers and talk to people. I haven't heard back anything positive there yet, and he does appear to be heavily taken up with the election at the moment, because he is formally the promoter of our prospective or actual Conservative candidate in this area. I did have the opportunity to write to the Chief Executive of Ashford the other day, after she wrote me a kind email about my departure from the chairmanship of CALC. So I wrote back and commented on some of the things she had said, and did at the end remind her that this has been going on for 2.5 years now, since I first spoke to her about it, and every so often I remind, and every so often it sits in the pile again. So that's the latest effort. All I can conclude is that they either don't see it as being anything they're really interested in, or they just don't want to do it. But they have no good reason, as far as I know. The village green itself has no value to them whatever. There's no hope value, they can't do anything with it.
And what proportion of the Ashford land does the village green take up?
A third-ish, maybe a bit more. If you think of the actual piece of land, I can send you a map in fact, if you think of the piece of land and you know where the pond is,
Pond and then the play area in the pond.
yeah,
pond.
the play area is not on the village green.
No.
There's a bit of history there. But if you take the pond and then you strike a line down to somewhere very close to Mixed Wetlands boundary, and you go the other way to the little piece of road by Woodland View, and then you come round by Jubilee Field, that is the village green. The piece of land where they sometimes have a horse or sometimes have sheep or whatever is not in it, but the fence is not actually the boundary. That's the bit that's not village green is bigger than the piece they fenced, and the play area and the piece the play area is in, but bigger than the play area, that is also not village green. The pond is village green.
So is it effectively landlocked as far
Yeah,
as...
well, it
development
landlocks
goes?
the rest of it actually. The irony is that because you're not allowed to go on the village green for other than legally entitled purposes, which is basically recreation-ish and looking after the village green, unless you can get to the other bit of the land other ways, it is landlocked. Now I think if they had established, but I'm not sure about this, if they had established certain rights to the other land before the village green was registered, which is decades ago, they may survive. In other words, the village green was kind of registered with them. But I did go and see the register, and I got papers when we were arguing over the bit of shenanigans that went on in 2011. And the inspector had to tell KCC to undo their errors. And I don't remember anything about rights over it.
So it's got right of access to the field for the farmer. That's all it's got.
And is that in the
It
registration?
must be because it's right from the original.
But I
Because
don't
otherwise
remember
you
seeing
can't
it,
get
that's
through.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The part they own, what are their maintenance and repair and maintenance responsibilities?
The play area.
No, not the player, the part that Ashford own.
If Ashford own the play area, they own all of that land.
I'm sorry, I'm confused.
They
I thought the play area was different.
that whole field
It's not in the village green, but it
belongs
is
to Ashford.
So is our ultimate aim to basically have the whole lot as part of Wittersham?
what I first
And if
asked.
so, the bit that we don't have at the moment, what are their current repair and maintenance responsibilities? And if they have any, there'll be a cost. And surely we're offering a way of reducing their potential
We don't have
financial
any.
exposure.
We don't have any of it. It's all Ashford Borough Council.
Yes.
And even the
The
village green.
whole of the
The
area.
whole of that area belongs to Ashford Borough
That's
Council.
So which bits are we asking them
don't.
to transfer?
Okay, let me explain.
I thought the way you were describing it, Jeremy, there was a bit.
In the middle.
No, I was
In the middle.
No, I was answering a different question.
Oh,
Let me
sorry.
try and put it in context. All that land over there, apart from the bit that Woodland View was built on, is Ashford's. A part of it, a third or third plus, is registered village green, which is now absolutely sterilised as far as any use is concerned, whatever,
Right.
apart from going and playing, more or less. The rest of it is not sterilised. It's owned by Ashford. They could build houses on it if you could only get in there and got proof, of course, but they haven't managed to do either of them. It was put up in the plan. Well, not that piece of land, but the next piece. It comes to the same thing, and the inspector threw it out because he said he didn't like it. That's behind Poplar Field. He didn't like that because of the sort of land it was, and also the access was dodgy. The planners just said, oh, you can go across here, oh, you can go across here, and it didn't work. When I spoke to the chief executive 2.5 years ago and gave her a map and a little explanation, and really all I said was, would you like please to go and talk to whoever in your team is necessary so we can have a discussion about it, rather than us make a great proposal and just said, can we just find out who we're going to talk to about it, if it's in principle possible, and they've never responded on that question. What I said to her was, we could take over the play area, we could take over the village green, we could take over all of it, we could take over any version of it, depending on what Ashford's willing to do. But where I have since then, that was the original thing. Where I've since focused was to say we don't really want the play area to stay where it is, because it would, by the way, a very run-down play area and it's too far away from all the houses. It could move to the village green if we were able to do it, and we also had residents who were very keen to try and raise money for that. And also, I started to focus on saying, look, we're interested in all of it, but if you just talk about the village green, Ashford has got no logical reason in refusing to give us the village green because it has no value. Their property people may say, oh, the rest of it will be worth some money if we wait 20 years. But the village green will never be worth anything because you can never do anything with it.
So in essence, in summary, I can't see any reason why we wouldn't want the whole lot.
Indeed.
And secondly, it seems that the village green is sort of operating as a ransom strip, to use the planning vernacular. In other words, if you can't get access, if it's the bit that they couldn't build because they couldn't get proper access. So our point of arrival should be, we want the lot, how do we go about getting it?
And what I then, when she finally said, can you send me a written proposal, which I did, but it was a written outline proposal, that's exactly the point I made. That was in the note I did, which is how long do you think it's ago now? About a year?
And they just haven't
Must
responded.
be longer than
They
that.
never responded. They never
Well,
responded.
I know it's a bit busy up until 4th of July, but it's screaming, let's bring Johnny in to have a good chat. Well, he's our ward representative, and it's probably a bit above our pay grade to collectively to be able to take that on. The fact that we've written, and presume there's a copy of that letter, and they haven't responded, I think is
that's
unacceptable.
Your response.
It is very poor.
It's unacceptable.
As far as saving the money is concerned, my aim would always have been to take it with a dowry, And whether or not we got the dowry, we would obviously also be in the opportunity for an opportunity of asking for grants. I did sit on the grants panel for 3 or 4 years. And money does get, you know...
Who's maintaining the whole thing at the moment then?
Well, we cut the grass.
So Alf cuts the grass?
Alf cuts the
but
grass.
Ashford, and that's back into the original
Okay.
money that we got, because they
Okay.
used to...
The risk would be, you see, that they would say, well, if you're taking it off us, we'll cut the caretaker fee down. But at the same time, of course, we're also saying, well, it's got to go up because of the inflation.
Well, that's a negotiation. I think I would suggest that we aim to have ultimately got lot, and we ask Johnny with his guidance.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think we are pushing it along a bit ourselves, aren't we? Because you did include in your letter to the Chief Executive a mention.
I reminded her
And a
that it's
suggestion
been
that we have a
going on and
meeting.
on, and can we get some...
Yeah. And we want a name, really. We want
At one stage, I know that it went to the lawyers. That was when I was first asking for a view in principle, and it didn't need to go to the lawyers. And I was then told that it had gone to them, and of course, like always, it just sat in a pile. And it got dug out, but it then went wherever it went and got lost again, and on we went. The trouble is that we're not in a position, or I don't think we're in a position, to be able to jump up and down on them all the time, because all that does is encourage them to say, no, go away. They've never said that either. They've just never picked it up.
Well, it'll remain on our agenda.
Indeed.
And I'd like to see some progress on that as with previous items.
As you saw, I did offer to take you along to introduce you to her. Now, I don't think she makes a habit of meeting all parish council chairmen. I only got in there because I was chairing calc.
Sure.
But, and we got on pretty well. But, I mean, you may say, well, what was pretty well? Because I didn't get what I wanted.
Well, anyway, we're determined to try to get possession of that land if we possibly can.
Yeah.
The cemetery planning application, this meanders forward, does it?
Well, it's left with Jeremy at the moment.
We'll come back to you again, Jeremy.
Indeed. Councillor Shilton is aware of the issue. I took him over the land when it was still wet a few months ago with his partner, but we'd only otherwise engaged. I, at the calc meeting, took the opportunity of talking to one of the calc Ashford members who is very knowledgeable on planning issues and has access to people who know about that stuff. And she said she would talk to one of their planners in the organisation she is the chair to see if they felt that she felt her view immediately was this doesn't really make sense. But of course it depends on the legislation. And she would ask if she could, one of their planning specialists, whether they felt there was an exemption. Now I haven't heard back, and it's probably time I chase her after a couple of weeks, tomorrow, to see if she had, because she had forgotten, see if she'd had the opportunity to find anything out. The other thing is that one of the residents here, he has agreed that, or offered really, that he's talking to the person in one of the planning consultancies that he knows well, that's worked for him, and to ask that lady if, not whether she thinks there's an exemption, what she thinks it would take for us to comply. In other words, how big a job is it? Who would do it? How long, how much? So we're between the two. We try and get out of it, but failing that, we have to do it. I mean, this is all absolutely brand new. It was April.
No, sure. Yeah, it's just unfortunate that it lingered on over that date. Yeah.
Indeed, and that was partly because they rejected it earlier on the grounds they didn't like the map, whereas the map was actually of no consequence at all because it was just a blank sheet of paper with a, virtually with a, it was because it didn't scale, they said. I don't know exactly what the issue was, but it was done again, and then they said, well, as far as we know, they accepted it, but then said, aha, well, you're over the date now.
As you know, there is this complication.
Absolutely, totally.
The farming in the protected landscape grant is available, but I think if it went into another financial year, then
It may not be.
We may not be.
Exactly.
So that would be a pity to lose it.
Well, it'll mean they don't get their protected landscape.
It would mean we didn't get their money.
Oh, no, we didn't. Our hedge may be a bit scrubby. We have to put a hedge in because it's in the sale, but or the gift, but it doesn't have to be the same one.
Yeah.
I mean, what we were going to have to do, if you remember, Alan, was comply with the requirements on the hedge to get the grant.
Right.
We don't have to comply. We only have to put a hedge in. Otherwise,
It is unfortunately noticeable that the last three items all involve inactivity by Ashford Borough Council, and I'm afraid
Or somebody anyway.
we're a little bit unlucky maybe.
I mean, I think that's the problem, isn't it? The common problem is it's inactivity by a department somewhere, but it's really quite difficult to know exactly where the inactivity is, because there are an awful lot of people who seem to know about it, but actually don't, in the end, do anything about it. And that's just a recurring theme in local politics, I suppose.
I'm afraid so. The cemetery direction sign, I know that it was requested that one should be provided. Where are we on that?
Right, I spoke to the public rights away because it's their post that we want to attach one to, and he's quite happy that we should do so. My next problem is finding someone that provides signs. I went, googled it like you do, and I've ended up on Etsy with things like this.
Just while we're at it, I mean, are we not exceptional, because we do have Commonwealth graves down there, I'm sure we've discussed it before.
Oh, but there's, I've got a wonderful to have one of those,
Change that to funeral.
there's a special, the fact that we've got,
Commonwealth grave.
yes, and that will go on the gate itself.
That's coming, is it?
Yes,
It's on its way.
yes, well, it's in the process, so I've got all the books.
So we are rather exceptional in not having that when we do have it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Any comments?
Can I, we're all going to brand
Obviously
this
not.
already, you know.
Not that it's...
You missed it, I'm afraid.
You just change wedding to funeral.
But the idea was, I mean, this is all I've found. The others are signs that you can attach. Well, we don't want it. It's got to be something that's on there. And they do a medium and a large. Obviously, it would just have cemetery, and it would have to be on each side, one attached each side. The one that's 145 by 400 mil is $14.99, and the bigger one is $22.99, and delivery is $2.99, and it can be done within days.
Is the bigger one two-sided or?
Well, no, they would need two of each.
We
Shouldn't
don't
be
need it
sure.
two-sided, it's against a hedge.
How
The
can
post
it get
is
the
it
hedge?
will
It's on a
be-
pole.
Yes, but it's against a hedge, isn't it? So that you wouldn't see it from the other side anyway.
No,
No.
so you only need one.
Mm.
Which way would it be pointing then?
You
To
could
the
see
down
it
to
if
the
you were
centre.
coming out of the
It would be like the top one.
Right, no, I
The
just,
top one.
I was trying to envisage a two-sided.
Just a small one, I would have thought, wouldn't you? Small.
How big is the big one? You said it was 145 mil, which is...
The large one is 215 by 600.
I mean, one like
Quite
that
big.
would be perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because the one above says footpath and it's about that size,
Yeah.
so we just need one under
One like
that
that.
says
Yeah.
cemetery.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So you're happy,
There you
so
go.
Yeah.
are you happy that I should go ahead
Yes.
Local knowledge.
and do that?
And that's on a metal.
It's metal.
Something stuck on a metal.
Well, the whole thing, it's a metal plate.
it'd be aluminium with something put on it. That's,
No.
And
It'd be
it
a
would just
stone
have
sort of
cemetery.
or a sticker.
Do you get fixings with it?
By the looks of things, it looks like it's got holes in and it's
Mm.
at the top, tied wrapped round it.
I'm sure I can do that.
And then I just wonder whether after we
Yeah.
do something at the bottom so it's a double.
get them to spell cemetery correctly.
That was on University Challenge
Yes.
thing. And I can never answer any of their questions, but I got that right, and they didn't spell it correctly. That was a long time ago.
There's nothing on the agenda about the path in front of the churchyard wall.
No.
Have you heard
Change
any-
Nothing.
That
I've
that
chased,
needs to come to open spaces and highways.
and I can report then.
Okay.
Okay. Just one item, not item 5, planning application at Forge Meads. I did go online and just look at it this evening, and there are as yet no comments at all. So presumably the neighbours are not up in arms about it.
I hand delivered
Yeah, excellent.
through every door.
So we
That
know.
was
We
consulted.
do have a neighbour here.
No problem with us.
Oh, fine. Excellent. Thank you.
So that's a unanimous 100% from the public. Support.
That's right.
So, if we have now to make a decision, and I think the decision is that we will support. Is everybody happy with that?
Yeah. Sure.
Item 6, to agree amended policy for dealing with press media. Paula, you've kindly been doing a bit of work on this.
Yep, just very briefly, I looked through the communication and media policy we've currently got, which was last reviewed in 2022. I then started doing a bit of research amongst some of the smaller charities, some of the parish councils around the country, and I thought it's a different area in the sense that our one is around dealing with primarily with the press, and social media is where the public are involved effectively, and that also most of the parish councils I looked at had reference to councillors' behaviour and in some detail. So I took the view that this is all about managing risk effectively on the social media side, and my recommendation is that we don't. I looked at this and thought, how the heck do we merge this into two? And I thought the simplest thing is probably just to have two separate policies, one dealing with the media, communication with the press and so on, and one dealing in some detail. I went through it several times to try and cut it down, but there's so much involved these days, from Facebook to Nextdoor to YouTube to LinkedIn, parish council emails, I came to the conclusion that it was worth, if you're going to do this properly, to have all the detail on there, and it's a behavioural one as well with councillors. But de facto, I think if the public are in a meeting, then it would apply to them as well, I would suggest. So that's where we are at the moment. So I think basically, I know you probably only got it a few days ago from me, but I think it's the first point is, do we have to have one, which could be quite a behemoth, or do we have two, and they're both very comprehensive. I did change the communications and media policy just to explain that we've got a separate social media policy because things are changing so dynamically in the digital world and so on.
I think everything Paul said in terms of desirable behaviour is right, and it's very comprehensive. I would worry about it going as a policy in this context. When we set out to have our own code of conduct 13 years ago, or whatever it was, our code of conduct was stripped down to the absolute bare legal necessity, and all it says in it is really what the law requires. Other councils all, and as far as I know, all of them adopted the Kent draft, which is also used by Kent and Ashford, and they are now causing a lot of trouble for the legal department at Ashford, who are incurring lots of fees with solicitors trying to referee arguments going on over other councils' code of conduct. And the point seems to be, and it's why we did what we did at the time, and Paul and Yvonne remember it, they were both here, and Sue. If you have something that says councillors must do this and mustn't do that, you are generating the opportunity for people to complain. We have had in this meeting, or these council meetings, on 2 occasions previously, I think, certainly one, where one of our voluble residents actually said, I'm very sorry, the resident, I'm very sorry that you don't have the Kent code, because if you did, I could complain about you not sticking up, upholding it. Because it was, you mustn't say this to the members of the public, and you have to do that, and you have to be polite and courteous at all times, and all the rest of it. Just gives people the opportunity to complain. And I fear that what we're doing here is potentially dropping councillors into the same hole. Other councils around Ashford, which I know, they have often problems more with other councillors than with members of the public. There are some where they have big divisions, and they're fighting each other, and it all goes off to the Director of Legal, and he then gets external lawyers to referee it. All a complete waste of time and money, and he's worrying about his budget. £4,000 for a typical complaint it's costing him. And he's got, in the last year, I think he had about 20. It's hopeless. So, as I say, I think everything that Paul said in terms of desirable behaviour is entirely right. The moment you put it down and say that's the council's policy, you give people the opportunity to start waving it around and saying that they want to complain about someone not upholding it. That's the worry.
Excuse me.
It's an awkward balance.
So are you suggesting possibly that we need to do nothing?
I think perhaps there's the opportunity for something which is somewhat less specific, and or that has the sense in it, not that it is a policy, but that the desirable aims of the council's use of social media would ensure that, rather than councillors must do this and mustn't do that, because immediately you've established a sharp line and people can say, oh he did, no he didn't, yes it was you started it, and you're into sort of juvenile behaviour, which does happen in other councils. And there have been councils that can't make any progress with anything. We've never had that problem here. I'm not saying our councillors are going to get into problems, but we do have other people who can stir things.
just on those points, I mean, and I do take your point, I didn't actually look at any of the Kent ones. I looked far and wide.
Yeah, sure.
When we first started looking at this 12, 13 years ago, the iPhone was only a year and a half old.
No, that's the code of conduct I was talking about.
Okay, I mean, I take your point. If you either do nothing, but I think that to say that we're a parish council that has no policy on social media and behaviours, I think is ducking the issue. But I'm more than happy. I put this forward as a suggestion. But I'd be interested to know what you take out, Jeremy. But at the end of the day, also, a code of practice is different from legal requirement. It is different. And also, if you do, we hardly, actually, to be honest, we don't get many complaints, and we get even fewer people complaining. And they do have the lawyers do have a clause that effectively supports them taking action or not action if it's vexatious behaviour. And given one or two people's approach, that wouldn't be difficult to prove. I think the key thing is we either have something or we don't. If we do have something, we need to probably go through this, and I'm happy for you to do that and say, look, we can correlate that in a much shorter document, use an umbrella phraseology approach, and then you could maybe put it back into the media one and call it communications media and social media. But we have to differentiate, I think, between the media, as we all knew historically, which was basically press, TV and radio, and social media, because we've already sort of embarked on that. Sally mentioned that the police use that to provide an avenue to and fro. We've commented in the past on Nextdoor, to with your very useful comments on the big hole outside the Swan and Mervyn's house. I think that it's one of those things that we're going to have to tackle, but maybe we tackle it in a de minimis way to start with.
Could we ask possibly for comments on Paul's very useful suggestions by the next meeting, and then we can discuss the views that expressed.
The middle way is to have a policy which calls itself a policy on social media, and it is broad, and it then has attached to it some guidance or some examples or some aims or something like that, which picks up, because Paul Paul's detailed work is all good stuff to recognise that you shouldn't do this and you should do that and all the rest of it, so long as you don't suddenly legislate for it as a policy and say that's what's got to happen, because then you're going to have people tripping over it and people making a point about it.
Well, as I was saying, I think if we can all look at it in some detail and see if we can put something together, I think we do need something. We need to recognise the existence of what is now probably the most common form of communication that exists.
I found it a very illuminating task in the sense that once I put everything on the list of what social media may be used to do, it was like, wow. I mean, it's just part of our DNA these days, isn't it? It's,
yes.
You know, if you look at all the list here, from good news stories to count, to the police, to schools, to sports club, to, you know, we've already got bits of it already, so if there's a query from a resident to the clerk, there's already an avenue, if you like, for that. And it's just saying social media may be used for this, and this. But maybe we do have a shorter thing, and then we have a kind of an appendix. But we need to be careful it doesn't sort of end up like Topsy on over the place.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to if that's okay, to continue going. But what I would suggest is any thoughts, ideas, you want to have a go at going through it with a red pen or what have you, and hopefully after the next meeting we can have something that's agreed. I do think we should all agree right now that the appointing the clerk as webmaster sounds like a brilliant idea to me. But then we'll kill each other in the rush to not do it.
Well, she is.
My only issue was the use of individuals' names unless given written permission to do so. Because certainly we've sent emails amongst ourselves. I mean, certainly when we first started looking at the cemetery and had the site meeting with Tobias and Charlie, we were talking about Tobias and Charlie all the time. When Mr Hurst brought up his complaint about the road, that communication was spread, and it was, you would put in there the correspondence from Mr Hurst or whatever. So I thought, well, we don't necessarily have people's written permission to use their name when we're talking.
Exactly. You can too easily. We have difficulty making progress with things, as John has already been quite rightly concerned about this evening. And if we put obstacles in our way, we bureaucratise the thing and we make even less progress. There's always a good reason why you can't do something.
You can get over that by basically putting in like a lot of the stuff. If you buy stuff online or you order stuff or you're a member of a club or anything online, you'll find that there'll be some small print, which basically says, in this case, if Mr Smith writes in and acknowledges his name is Mr Smith, then we have a right as a parish council to use his name.
Well, that's right, because I've always thought...
and in the small print you put if you want your idea, to me the simplest way of understanding it is when you have to get permission for little Jimmy to be photographed in the school photograph or what have you these days. So it's a similar principle to that.
So I've always gone with, because open and transparent, if somebody's writing to me, wants something done, they want something done.
Yeah.
So that's what they have asked.
Yeah.
They should accept that that's what's going to go, unless they say not to. I don't want my name mentioned, which has come up a couple of times. And I try, if I'm circulating stuff that people have sent me, I will sometimes copy that email rather than forward the email, because it will have information on it that I don't think you ought to send. So I do try, to make it cover ourselves that way.
When members of the public make comments on planning applications, their name is not redacted, is it?
The signatures, but not the name. They have to have the name.
They have to have the name.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that there are systems to deal with it. But I think you made a really useful point there. I look forward to your input.
Thank you very much for that. Internal auditors report.
We've all got a copy.
Yep.
So his his only recommendation was that we hadn't reviewed the cemetery fees for a while. Otherwise, if you've read it, all he seems fairly happy with what we do.
So reviewing the cemetery fees would fall initially to the cemetery group, so to speak,
Due to finance.
under finance. Okay.
So we can do that.
When was the last time we increased them? Can you remember? It's
27
a long time.
July 2017,
It's sort of a
Oh,
guideline.
wow, yeah.
in as much in
Some rough, yeah.
That's great.
when the last time we reviewed, I got fees from different places to say this is what they're compared with what we're charging, and we increased ours then.
There must be some sort of benchmark, otherwise people would.
Well, I think it depends on your size of cemetery, what your overheads are, because our overheads aren't that great. We don't have somebody just looking after the cemetery.
One way of doing it would be to plug in the 2017 fees into the appropriate formula. Often people often do this for salary increases, so where you haven't had an annual salary increase, and then say, what was £1 worth in 2017? In order to maintain parity, what's the percentage increase? That's one way of doing it. Or you take a sample of, I don't know, 4 or 5 other cemeteries around Kent,
Yeah, which is what
which is
So
what
that's
you
the
can
best
do.
way of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be interesting, but also ask them when they last put their fees up, because if they haven't done it for the same.
Well, you can usually then, it says
Yes.
like ours do at the top.
Yes.
That's why I know.
Does Goudhurst have is Goudhurst a burying authority or?
Headcorn is.
Right. It's just that the Goudhurst Parish Council, they're quite a switched on lot for things like regulations and fees and CCTV and all that stuff. But anyhow.
So, would you like to look at other fees charged, and perhaps
Okay.
we can bring forward an item to the next meeting for consideration? Now we're into item 8, the annual return, resolve to approve the annual governance statement. Which
We've all seen it, so, but I still need to go through
Yeah.
and take up the right thing. So this is the official piece that I get. Yeah, checklist. This was the form that
Yes.
internal auditor has to sign. So let me come down to our bit. So we have to say yes or no to the questions. So if I just read out the yes means this authority bit instead of the all go wrong bit. So prepared its accounting statements in accordance with the accounts and audit regulations. Happy with that?
Yeah.
Made proper arrangements and accepted responsibility for safeguarding public money and resources in its charge.
Yes.
Yes.
Has only done what it has the legal power to do and has complied with proper practices in doing so.
Yeah.
During the year, gave all persons interested the opportunity to inspect and ask questions about this authority's accounts. That's when I had to put the notices in the notice board and on the website. Well, actually now it's just website, they don't actually mention notice boards. So, but that goes on there.
Okay.
Considered and documented the financial and other risks it faces and dealt with them properly.
Yes.
Arranged for a competent person independent of the financial controls and procedures to give an objective view on whether internal controls meet the needs of this small authority, which you've seen.
That's David just.
Responded to matters brought to its attention by internal and external audit. Well, this was obviously we're looking at the cemetery fees, and last year it was mentioned that the internal auditor's bit wasn't quite right. It had been ticked, and over the years, F, which which is the petty cash payments properly supported, has been ticked. Change of external auditor, and he picked up that no, we don't, because he rang and said, do you hold petty cash? No, we've ticked that, been ticked incorrectly. But all those years before hadn't been picked up. So now, and the thing is, on this you have to, if you're putting not covered, you have to explain why. So we just put in no petty cash held, because to put a separate sheet in just seemed a bit far-fetched. So yes, so we've done that. Disclosed everything it should have about its business activity during the year, including events taking place after the year ended relevant.
Yes.
So we've been pretty all the minutes and things. So now has to be signed by the chair and the clerk. So if you wouldn't mind signing your book there, please.
You've got an NA number 9, I take it.
Yes, sorry, I've already ticked that bit.
Who does this go back into?
This goes to the external auditors who are Mazars.
So right.
I had to email it, or goes in. I put, they dated it, but I put in pencil the minute number, which I will confirm. So right, now what did I make a note of? I need, so if we've resolved to approve, could I have a proposer and a seconder, please? So we are happy with all that.
Proposer Paul. Seconder Anna.
Thank you. Right, so we've signed and dated, and now then we got to the accounting statement. And these are the figures, obviously, from last year's ones. And the figures you've got now are the ones that will have been taken from the accounts that you've already seen. They have to be split up slightly because obviously the precept is done separately and the other receipts and the staff costs are taken out from the other payments. Then what I have to do, if there's 15%, if there's a difference between these, I have to explain why. So on the payments, so this is where I've got to explain why we have paid so much more. And that's something that I have to do separately. And all that goes with this, they charge us £300 for the pleasure, but this is the only thing that goes, plus a bank reconciliation sheet I have to do. And as I say, the variance thing, and that's all they see. They don't see any receipts and payments account, anything else, just purely.
Okay. Very good and cost effective from our perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this, so if everybody's happy with that, and
I didn't go back to the accounts, I'm afraid, there's a pile somewhere, but in number 3, total other receipts, I was kind of quite surprised to see 44,500 there. Other, that's not counting the precept. Now, of course, we've got Ashford's money and Kent's money and some money from the cemetery, but I couldn't figure out how, unless there's been a lot of burials, how we got to 44,500. I've forgotten something big.
Looking, I haven't got the accounts with
Well,
me.
because we get 1,000 for the caretaker as
but
well.
you should
from
have
that
it.
too. Yeah. It just seemed a lot of money, I was surprised. Put this
Well, it's
way.
41 the year before, so
Yeah, sure,
it's
indeed.
it's
Absolutely.
comparable.
Been burying lots of people
No, just the money we get coming in.
from, that's the question.
Have a look at your receipt. I haven't got the receipts and payments with me, but it will come in. Okay.
Cheers.
I can, if you want to hang on, I can go in
No,
and
don't worry then.
tell you.
Ashford
Obviously,
is
all
over
has
19 then.
All that's to add up. Would you like me to look
No,
into it?
no, don't worry, don't worry. It just struck me as I was surprised to see it was as big as it is. Memory.
Okay, I'll see which at the bottom.
Yes.
I don't mind it being a big number.
I have a proposal and seconder for that. Sue,
Yeah.
thank you. Colin, thank you. Thank you very much. then that's the bit that goes up, and this is where they enter their bit if they have any comments, and then that gets sent back. September time usually. Okay.
Very good. Well, thank you for all that detail. So we've signed and dated the accounting statements.
Yep. Done all that now.
Okay. A bit of correspondence. Proposed diversion of public footpath. That's the thing you were holding.
Yep.
And this is where we have a form to fill in. I should be grateful if you kindly complete the following and return it to me as soon as possible. I agree the proposed diversions are in the landowner's interests, so we either tick that, or I do not agree because it's obvious it's in the landowner's interest to take the footpath. It was going straight past the front door.
Sure.
So we're happy with that.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's possible to do it, but one of the considerations, concerns that people had a while back was where 80 came out on Wittersham Road, i.e. by...
Yeah, it's nothing to do with this.
Yeah, I don't know if okay.
I can take it.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, basically
yes,
with
Malcolm
huge...
was happy with whatever,
Yeah.
but I need to go down and look at it from the roadside because there should be a finger post there anyway, which I don't
And
think
also
there is.
the gate was shut and there were two very large fierce dogs
Okay.
that caused consternation to people with small children.
Were you going to run past, did you say?
Oh, I didn't.
Okay.
Is that a yes or a no?
That was a no.
It was mentioned in the past, everything was so wet you couldn't walk it, but maybe on Wednesday, you know, do you take
No,
requests?
it's too, no, it's, well, the last time I went to it was awful wet. It was
Yeah,
diabolical. And it's probably too far, and then you've got too much road that I don't like taking
Fair enough.
people on the road. Right, the next question. I agree the proposed diversions are not substantially less convenient to the public. Or I do not agree because
Is
It's
this
not.
the diversion you described previously to us?
Yes,
You said
yeah.
it makes sense.
it may, yes, it's taking it. Yes, instead of going this
There
way
you go.
Mm.
or
So that's
this
the
way,
new one.
you're going
So you go that way.
that way.
And
I mean, it
if you go
is
this way, you
a
go that
lot
way. Rather
further
than,
round,
that's Jane
but
Dean's, and that's the next thing I know, because everything goes.
It used to go through Jane Neam's garden, straight past the barn,
So it's actually
And
not
then
just
through
what
their
this
garden,
one wanted,
over
just a
Starling to
tiny
Jane's
diversion.
garden.
Yeah.
They're actually getting the big one.
So-
Yes, they've
don't
actually
see
chopped
why.
off that.
And the proposal has come from Jane, has it, or is it?
No, it's
I mean, my
not
concern
because
is actually
because the
through
path went
right
straight
stage,
past.
it's really nightmare.
their windows, you
People
know,
small
it's only
kids
this
and
much,
the two big dogs that were still
straight
very
past.
fierce, and
They got shut.
they kept the gate shut because they'd had stuff nicked. So you know.
And Jane is selling
Yeah,
property out
And
there.
the other one is as well.
Oh, really?
That's what I'm saying. It talks about the land.
Well, that's
and
the
putting it in
bridle
west.
path.
Absolutely.
Which they've actually,
How much
because
is
the
the
land
how long ago? No, will this
fenced,
get through
it's
before?
fenced.
he's fenced all this off.
Yeah.
And that's the, yeah.
I'm very surprised that
It's interesting, isn't it?
William
He's
and
fenced this bit.
Caroline Everett didn't raise it when they were in the barn.
Yeah, yeah, because we used to walk past then.
Mm.
Right, so you're all happy that it's not substantially less convenient?
No, that's fine.
All right, the next one, I agree that the proposed diversions would not negatively impact upon public enjoyment of the route as a whole. Well, it's better because you don't get
be
shouted
nosy at their garden.
or inside you go past, but you won't get shouted at. I agree that the new points of termination will not be substantially less convenient to the public. That's beginning and end, so. So you're happy for me to
Yes.
just tick all those? Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Now the detailed design for the speed reduction scheme at Peening Quarter for approval and notice of payment of final invoice.
Yes, I've just put that note on as such, because until we've approved it, they won't send us the invoice. But we have obviously agreed, which is we agreed it all in the first place, but you've all seen it, you're all happy with it.
And that reflects what was originally wanted.
And that's the figure we were expecting, is it?
Great, so.
Mm.
So, are you approving?
Yes, we are approving.
Thank you.
And that actually means that apart from them actually having to do the rest of the work, it is everything's done. We've
Yes.
got what we wanted,
Yes.
which is better than us spending all the money so far and then deciding not to do it.
Fine. Item 10, Working Party reports. Caretaker. That's Jeremy and myself. I mentioned, I think, at our pre-meeting that Alf had come along and I've been introduced to him at my house. I'm delighted to meet him, and he seems an ideal candidate for what he's currently up to. So apart from an item which is coming later on, I think generally speaking we're happy. He wants to continue.
Agreed.
We're very happy with the work that he carries out, as are the other villages.
So I went to Warehorn's annual
Yeah.
parish meeting and they were very happy as well. Although not quite as happy as they were, because of course he's moved from there. They used to have him
Oh, really?
on site,
Yes.
and now we've got him instead. So.
Okay. Finance, the monthly transaction statements again.
Right, once again, like I mentioned, I
Circulated.
haven't had the bank statement from Lloyd's, so I can't reconcile the whole lot or the Lloyd's statement. However, I ran the payroll early, so they definitely should have gone through. 28th, maybe 29th, definitely. So I'm happy that that's what it is, but I can't
Yeah.
prove it. This one, Unity Trust,
Yeah.
and the other.
Did anyone have anything that they wanted to discuss, query at all on the list of payments made?
No.
By and large, they're all regular payees, aren't they? So,
Yes, we had the annual ones that the insurance and
yes.
Coke
Yeah.
ones with the bigger amounts. And I
Fine.
transferred
Right,
money
so
this period, so yeah. Sign and date, please.
11.
Yeah.
What?
Thank you. And then we've got caretaker one, please, which is just made a bit bigger. Thank you very much.
Right. There's the transaction statements. Then we were going to just look at the caretaker scheme's budget,
However, until we've agreed the
possible.
yes, yeah, our last week, it's a bit difficult to
Okay.
agree it, so perhaps we need to defer that bit.
Shall we defer it till the last item? Okay. Planning. Decisions received?
As agenda, there's nothing new in.
No. We had previously discussed the first one, and we also discussed the second one at the last meeting. Open spaces. Alan, anything particular to report?
Well,
on that?
just the path in front of the churchyard wall, and we're waiting to hear back.
I've chased Mike Hill and nothing, which is unusual.
I mean, perhaps he's preoccupied with the electioneering or something, but even so, that shouldn't detract. That shouldn't stop him with responding sensibly
No.
to you. So
Well, we didn't get anything from the first time, which is unusual, so this time, and that was Jeremy's email, so I just followed it through and said I'd had a copy.
yes,
Has he had a chance to talk to Highways yet about it?
yes. Chase him again, I think. You know.
Does he have an assistant or
Well, he's got a PA.
You've copied her in, I'm sure.
Normally it goes to her
Yes. Okay.
rather than,
So nice.
goes to her first before it gets to him.
Yes.
maybe copy all of us in so Mike can see that. Or you could actually write to us to say that you passed this to Mike Hill and are awaiting his instructions,
I think that's quite subtle.
and copy him in.
I think so. Good one. Yes,
Okay.
go for the jugular.
He's a very conscientious person.
Exactly.
He is.
So
I mean, I hate to raise it, but is he okay? Is he well? I mean, I think if you, as you say, his assistant sees everything, if you copy her in, she might have a quiet word with Michael, come back to you and say he's not well at the moment, and disclosed or.
Where do people's hedges come under? Is that open spaces? Mr. Mallett's hedge down near the school. That Mr. Mallett.
Anthony.
What the one for sale?
Tony.
It's really bad. I had complaints from a lot of parents.
Well,
It's
Difficult area when a house has been empty for such a long time and
Yeah.
one of them's dead.
Yes, she does.
but it's going right across the footway.
If it's encroaching onto
Tell the estate agent.
public land or highways, is it the same thing as if you owned a tree that went into someone else's garden? They can cut the branch off, but they have to return the wood to you.
Yes.
So if we got Alf to cut the hedge, legally we might have to give the trimmings back to the owner, or Alf might just dispose of them.
Can he just cut the hedge, do you think? I don't
That's
know.
what I mean.
Well, I would say no, because once he cuts one hedge,
Yeah.
then, he
Yeah.
could cut mine. I can't do it. It just,
Yeah.
and he doesn't have time to cut everybody's hedges.
No.
So I'm afraid I would say no.
No, I agree. In the estate agent?
KCC highways are entitled, they don't like doing it, but they're entitled after writing and asking for it to be done to do it and charge for it. But they don't like it because all it leads to is big squabbles.
But I mean, the estate agent, I think, is the right way.
Estate
Pass
agents,
it on to the family.
yeah, indeed.
Well, I got his, obviously I dealt with him, so I could
Oh,
go.
okay. Yeah.
I think it's
Okay.
worth mentioning that the way Sue has raised this, that there's a potential for injury to small children, because the hedge is at eye level height of toddlers, and if one of them inadvertently walks in and has their eyeball damaged, then that wouldn't be a very happy situation. Many moons ago, the Britannia Building Society manager in Sevenoaks had 2 pillars outside of the office and they were crumbling at the bottom, and he contacted head office to get them repaired, and they just kept on ignoring him. So he very cleverly wrote a letter and told nothing but the truth, was saying that the mortar was crumbling out, falling onto a public pavement and potentially could cause injury. What he implied was it was coming from a great height. It was actually coming from 8 inches. But the next day they had a team from Britannia around to repair it. So I think if you just say what the risk is.
I would expect the response will be, do you know somebody who will do it? Because that's what used to happen, and Dave Fletcher used to do the hedge up round Homestead.
Robert Boudin would do it if paid.
Okay, thanks for that.
I'm sure.
But that's what I'm expecting. I mean, I'm happy to write to him.
Or one of the Tomset boys in Lloyd's Green did do it. There are people about to do it, but they have to be paid.
Oh yes, right. Expecting him to.
What's the Mallet relationship here?
Is it cousin of Philip?
Yes.
Second,
Who's still alive or dead? And that's never been solved.
He was dead, and cousin of John who's still alive.
Yes, it's Tony Mallet, Professor Anthony Mallet.
Okay,
Lives in Lewisham.
right. But owns this property.
Only owns the property, yes.
And it's got a for sale sign
Yes,
outside.
been up for a long time.
It went up sold for about
Yes.
3 weeks, and then it came down again. Which is,
Is that on the church side? Or?
yeah, just below the church. First house after the church.
Yes, yeah.
It's the one where the brick path that we were talking about running along the wall goes into his front garden.
Yeah.
Rather oddly. So presumably the front garden didn't used to exist.
Yeah. I believe it's got a lot of structural problems actually, because a friend of ours looked at it.
Yeah. I know somebody who's been in and said if you push the wall, the whole place would fall down.
Shame, because it
Yeah,
suits
so
someone very nicely, doesn't it?
Is the hedge connected to the house?
Don't ask.
Okay.
And the other one that still hasn't been done is Poplar View.
Is
Is
it,
it not
sorry,
been done?
No,
is which one?
Poplar View,
Which is popular.
Mr Cheston's house.
Oh, right.
And the other one that's soon going to become a problem is the old shop opposite the memorial. There's that hedge.
Oh, antique shop, yes.
yeah.
That is growing out.
Yeah.
The hedges have grown like
Yeah.
That's
tops
the
of this
trouble.
year, haven't they? Absolutely.
You get a hedge trimmer out.
Fine, thank you very much for that. Highways Paul.
Nothing to add to the previous minutes. Nothing's really changed.
Did you notice on the way to Rye, we've talked about the condition of the road many times, but
We mentioned that to Mike
yeah,
and tried to encourage him to speak to his
but there's a
office.
new little sign gone up, it's in East Sussex, that you're, because I always thought that the river marked the boundary between
No.
the two counties,
Yeah.
but I just passed it the other day and it's actually well this side.
Mm.
The boundary is ancient, and it will have been a
When the sea was there,
carefully
probably.
constructed centre line of the river as it used to be, high water to high water,
Yes.
drawing various perpendiculars out from each side and measuring them. There was a whole system for it that the Ordnance Survey used to do.
Yes. Yeah.
And of course it's not where they canalise the river, which is further on.
Quite.
The piece of road in Iden between Reader's Lane and Iden Stores is going to close for a day, I think, in the next couple of weeks, which is not the
17th.
worst part of the road anyway.
Of course not.
But we live in hope that that's going to be
But
done.
who knows, every time they do something like that, they might do one little bit. Or nothing to do with that at all, and it's, something entirely different.
Tenterden High Street's going to be closed later this week.
That's
Just
all right.
overnight.
Overnight on Friday.
Yeah, I couldn't find out when overnight started and finished.
It's normally 8 to 8, isn't it?
I don't know, I was looking for
8
it.
till 6, I think.
It's good,
Might do this up past Tesco in another year or two. That's like driving up past Tesco, it's like driving over railway sleepers.
You'd think that would be the responsibility of the developers, but that would be part of an S16.
The idea was, I think I mentioned this at some while back, but he gets affected by that, and I think the idea was that there's so much toing and froing with lorries it wasn't worth doing until that work was finished.
Yeah.
But it looks like it's coming to an end. The lorries are much smaller, they're vans now, there's landscaping going on. So I would have thought the good folk of Tenterden would be campaigning for that.
Okay. Cemetery Churchyard, Sue, anything
No, don't think there's anything.
other than what we've already discussed? Okay. Jeremy, the cult meeting at 29th of May.
Well, I ceased to be chairman.
I'm sure there were a lot of thanks were proposed, no
I
doubt.
don't think so.
Sorry, I wasn't there.
There was only one nominee, which was Peter Barker, who is a councillor. He's not chairman. He's a councillor at Great Chart, and his partner or wife, I'm not sure, Yolanda, is also a councillor at Great Chart, and he is her full-time carer. So he's at home essentially, I think.
Okay. Any particular issues arising?
I did send out
We've
the
had
message.
some
I don't remember anything very not from our point of view. There was a bit of an argument that went on about code of conduct because, it was me who set it up, unintentionally. I said it should go on the agenda, the report from the borough solicitor about the code of conduct complaints. And the chairman of Beversden, who is a farmer, Alistair, was in high dudgeon because they had about 3 complaints. He's had times at Featherstone with internal disputes and with, I think, internal and with residents. But it's been going on, and they've all, there's a number of them have gone off to Ashford for whatever. He regarded it as very critical of him and his council, and we shouldn't be discussing it at all. But actually, the legal, the Director of Legal had written to all parish clerks, including Yvonne, asking for parishes to think about what they can do to help the problem. And it was his annual report that had gone to the Standards Committee the previous month or two, and he had been asked to write to everybody, so it was entirely reasonable we should discuss it. But as I say, he was in high dudgeon over it. And I did apologise for having put it on the agenda, but it was right to have done it. The other thing that came up was Hodes Wood. Does everyone know about Hodes Wood?
Yeah.
Rather curious, I would have thought. The Environment Minister, it was said, and I'm not sure if it was the Secretary of State or a Minister of State further down, has ordered the Environment Agency to clear the mess up with a wet finger estimate of £10 million and take it out of their existing budget. I would have thought with the election coming and Labour likely to win, that will be rescinded, but we'll wait and see. The Environment Agency, I'm sure, will be hopping mad over it, but on the other hand, they were delinquent. They are the waste regulator now, waste disposal regulator, since it was taken off of KCC by the Environment Act 1990, whatever, 5, and or 7, maybe 6 or 7. And the fact is, it was reported to them and the police and all and sundry, and everyone just sat on their hands and did nothing until it was all too late. So I'm personally, I'm very pleased that they've been done for it, but I suspect they might still wriggle out of it. Alistair was pointing out, because Hodes Wood is half in, or part in Bellaston and part in Great Charles. It also happens to be a piece of history. It is where the body of the lady who was killed by the policeman was buried. That was in Hodes Wood. Not hopefully under the rubbish, but anyway, it was found later. He did point out, and he's a farmer, he would know, he said the problem is going to be not merely that they've got all this rubbish to clear, and of course the trees have gone, and what it'll be like, and they'll never clear all the rubbish up anyway, but there's going to be a lot of leachate going into the soil. It'd be horrible.
Is it private land, Hodes Wood?
Oh, it's a bit like down by Bud's Lane. It's strips. It's your old territory. It's been sold off in little pieces. It's one of these get-rich schemes of 30 years ago when someone owned something and said, "Oh, everyone can own a little bit of woodland for £1,000 or whatever." So everything's a mess.
That's probably another reason why it wasn't acted on.
Indeed, but
it is a disgrace.
It is a disgrace. So the leachate problem, it depends. I don't know what the groundwater situation and things like that is, but you can't do much about that.
But they also picked up other places in and around Kent where this is happening. There's a huge place up near the Medway area, isn't there? A huge dump where lorries have been running thousands of tons of material in.
I'm a bit surprised that, the police seem to have not taken much interest, and of course they will not regard themselves as in any way the regulator, but the likelihood is this has got to be organised crime. It needed money and investment and organisation to get the whole thing going. Someone had to go in and fell all the trees. Someone had to have people who could get rid of the public from making too much fuss. They then had to get lorries. They had some of which were supposedly, so we're told, going without registration plates. And put the word out among whoever to start providing the material. And in terms of the follow the money thing, I think is quite interesting. There is a suggestion from, if you saw it in the, there's a story in the Sunday Times, and I commented on it, and then the journalist made a comment under my comment, and I went back to him on it. Matt Rudd, I think it was doing it. they've got a bit of a, someone told me this anyway, they've got a bit of a credit card that had been chopped up. And they're pretty sure that a lot of the rubbish had come from local authority collections. And I don't quite understand how it would get diverted and how the money would flow. Because KCC is the waste authority. They pay for disposal of waste. Ashford only has to, or whoever, Great Charlton Brothers doing Ashford. Ashford only has to deliver the waste that they collect to KCC. It's chopped up. A lot of it has been, they reckoned it had been through a trommel. That's where the stuff's chopped up so that automated machinery can separate recyclables. And again, that's come out of an official waste stream, I would have thought. Although a lot of that's contractors, but nevertheless, it's bulk and it's official. And it's very strange to think how, as I say, how someone would get the money to say, well, I can get paid £200,000 and I can go and tip it there for £50,000 or whatever the numbers are.
Do you remember a year or three ago there was we got very worried about large lorries going down Swan Street?
Indeed, that's another matter.
I'm just comparing it to that. I know it is.
That was
and down there was a centrifuge. Basically,
it was breaking up
a
hard
bloody great centrifuge, and it whizzed round, and bricks came out, and then smaller bricks came out, and it distributed everything into into categories.
That's right.
And it sounds to me as though somebody's been doing that sort of thing.
Well, maybe. I spoke to Adrian about that last time, because it's his son that runs the business, and he showed me the licences, and I looked them up online.
I wasn't for a moment inferring that they were involved, but it's just...
But it's just how those things do go on, and they can be orderly, as well as disorderly. But I keep saying, why I started talking about that was, I'm surprised the police weren't interested. Because this is not just some traveller. This is seriously organised.
Well, presumably somebody who's got waste then was paying, presumably a cheap rate, to be able to get rid of it without having to worry too much about where it was going.
If you were thinking it was skips, totally possible, because it's a rough business. Anyone can have a 10 or 15-year-old skip lorry and take stuff away and forge their licences if the household is bright enough to even ask to see it, and go and tip it wherever, nearest house. That's a different matter. This apparently was, they reckoned, coming from separated waste streams.
They must be able to trace the source, surely.
That's why they winched it in the card, because they couldn't, but the police would be able to go and find something out if they've got enough of the number, find out whose card it was, whose individual it was, and then if that went off to the local authority, they've got a thread to pull on. But then people have to take an interest to do that. It's one of those things where, it's all very difficult, and there are other jobs to do.
Well, and if it was genuinely organised crime, they have ways and means of buying off the agencies.
It's all true as well, indeed.
Horrific, the whole thing. Fine. We're down now to the date of the next meeting, 9th July, which we've all got details of. Items for information. Anybody got?
No.
No.
Thank you.
I was just rather sad. I was intending to, well, I am intending anyway to go and say hello to the headmaster of the school, because I thought it'd be nice to have a good link there. I discovered, however, that he's leaving.
He's indeed heard today, yes. Is he?
That's a shame.
Say that again. Sorry.
George has resigned.
Oh,
Do we know why?
The bit I half heard at the garden this morning was that it's family issues, and he needs, I don't know where he lives, I think someone suggested he needs to stop commuting as far because of family issues.
That has lots of implications.
The immediate reaction
Well, for
from...
example, Giles has been working very hard with the music in the school, and he's delighted that he had such good cooperation from George.
Yes.
To get
the deputy head is
there are
going
lots
to
of plans he's got for music musical education, sharing it in the venues and so on. So that's all going to
Deputy Head
Some
is
of it
going to
unstuck.
stand in for
And there are-
the
there are
next
lots
2
of other
terms. They
applications.
think they will aim to recruit for Easter. And the Deputy Head will stand in between now and then. And I suppose it might be a successor, I don't know.
that's disappointing because it is disappointing. I mean, I'm disappointed because
Lindsay and Jeanette both very, I think the right word would probably be upset. I mean, they're obviously disappointed, but I think they're upset by it because it's just something's going really well and it just suddenly stops. Because he was
he
obviously...
hasn't been there very long. It doesn't seem any time since he started.
That's right. And the previous one, of course, Mrs. Claire Frost was very good as well.
Indeed.
But George had got huge energy from what I could see on my occasion down there.
But I think it's going to be a loss, I think.
I'm sure that's right. So no other items for information.
If I could just remind you to holiday dates if you're away, if you could let me know, please. Thank you.
So I think we now close the...
We need to resolve. I need a proposer and a seconder to resolve that we're
I'll
going to.
propose that.
Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you.
And so
So, everybody happy with the budget that we come up with now?
yeah,
Yes.
Yes.
Lovely.
we approve.
Yes. Thank you.
Was that in public session?